Hello and welcome to everybody on Cloud Fitness. So in today's video of Python series, we are going to create our first class and object in Python. So we have been discussing about OOPS concepts in my previous tutorial. I do recommend watching that before proceeding to this video because that is when you will actually get the clear picture of what was explained in the previous tutorial, and this tutorial is an extension to the previous tutorial. So let's move ahead to our PyCharm editor where we have been doing most of the work till now. Right, so in the previous video we have seen without oops how can we actually do the coding part, right? Can we work without oops? Yes, we can. And how we can work without oops, we have seen it even with the help of this particular example where we have all the employees, the attributes of all the employees present in multiple functions, and even if we want to put same attribute in all of these functions we can, but we have to go manually and apply all the different attributes that we want to add for a particular employee in that particular function. So if I have 1,000 employees, if I want to change anything, I have to go ahead and change the 1,000 functions for those employees, right? That is where oops comes into picture, where it actually helps you a lot in terms of creating flexibility, in terms of adding flexibility to your code and helping you in the reusability of the code. So when we talk about oops, so we have, like I have told about, that it is a real world programming, it is an object oriented programming, everything is considered as object in the oops part, right? So now we have already seen that okay, we create a class, and inside that class we can define the attributes of an employee, and if we have to change, we can change everything inside that class itself rather than changing it for individual employees, right? So now we will go and look it into more details. So if you see on the screen, right? So when we talk about oops, what we are doing, we are creating a class as I have explained earlier, right? So we are creating a class, and a class is created using the class keyword, right? So now when I talk about employees, right? Now employees is considered as a real world object. So all the employees, right? Whether it is employee 1, employee 2, employee 3 or employee 1,000, all of these are considered as a real world objects. Now these objects are created from a class in terms of oops, right? Now I create a class of employee. Now this employee is what? It is a template. So if I have to create employee A, if I have to create employee B, if I have to create employee C, I will use that as a template. So if I have to change anything that is common to all the employees, I can easily go and change the template itself rather than creating individual functions for each employee. So that is where class helps you, right? So now class of employee will also help you in another sense. Now if a person is not an employee, right, so he will not be the part of that particular class, correct? So if you see, we have created a class of employees, which is nothing but it is a blueprint or template for creating objects. What are objects? The real world entities. What are real world entities in this example? Employees, right? Now this class will have all the properties, it will have all the functions associated to the object. It will have all the attributes of an employee. It can have any function that can be used on that particular employee, right? So if you see, this is the syntax how we create a class. Class employee, the class name, which is nothing but employee name. Now this is a function kept inside a class. Don't worry about things like what is this underscore in it, what is this self. We are going to discuss it. If not in this video, we are going to cover it in the next video, so no worries on that. So this is nothing but this is a syntax part of it. We are going to discuss that why do we have this, right? Now once you have this employee class, what we can do is there can be multiple functions for an employee, right? So for example, maybe a function for calculating his salary, maybe a function for getting his name, his ID, his salary, his post, anything. So like that, there can be multiple functions associated to that particular employee. Now once we have this class employee, if I have to create any object, if I have to create any employee, I can create it using this class of employee. Now if you see in this particular command, what I have done, a is equal to employee. A is equals to employee. Employee is nothing but the class, right? So the moment, now this syntax what you see over here, a is equal to employee. Now what is happening here, I am creating an object a. I am creating an object a from the employee class. Similarly, I am creating an object b from the employee class. This is how it works. Now when I am calling this, when I am creating this object, I am passing in few parameters to it, right? I'm passing few parameters. Now what are these? This says Maggie, 123, $300 and HR. Now what happens is, the moment this object is called, what will happen is it will go to the employee class and it will give these parameters to the employee class. The moment it gives these parameters to the employee class will take these parameters over here, the name, ID number, salary and post, and then it is going to say that this is the name, this is the ID number, this is the salary and this is the post. Okay, and then what will happen is it will run another function, right? The function which is present inside the same class. Now it is going to say name, don't worry about the self right now, name is post and his or her salary is this, right? Now these are the attributes that we have passed over here, right? The class has taken these attributes, it has run this particular function and it will give you the output. Now let me run this particular function. Now you will see it says Maggie is a HR and her salary is $300. Abhishek is HR and her salary is $600, right? So why is this happening? This is happening because first of all, what did you do? You created an object of employee. That object is A. So, okay, you created an object. Now let me just comment these two lines. Okay, A dot information and B dot information. Let me just comment it and run it. Now the moment I run it, nothing will happen. There will be no output. So because what has happened here is I have just created the object. I have not done anything with the object. Now when I uncomment my line 24 and 25, if I uncomment it, what I am doing on this object A, on this employee Maggie, on this employee Abhishek, I am calling this function information. So now if I run this, what will happen is, first of all, when I created the object A, what happened? It went to the employee, okay, it gave all these attributes. So we understood that this class has an employee A, which is nothing but Maggie, 123 is her ID number, $300 is the salary and HR is the post. It took that, but it did not return anything until you call this particular function which is operating on that object. So A dot information, because I want to get the information of my employee. Now I run this particular function. The moment I run this function, right, now this function already has these values, name, post and salary, right? Because these were created when you created the object. That is when you got these two rows as the output. Now this has actually, even if it does not make any sense to you right now, but eventually, as we proceed through the videos, it will start making more and more sense, because once you get a good grip of this and how it works, it will really help you in coding. So now another question that you might have, okay, functions you have already created, right? So we have already been creating a function till now. So you pretty much understand how does this function works and how does these f strings works. We have already, done videos on this. Now the question that will come to you is, what is the self that is being used? Right? Why are we even having this keyword self, and what exactly is the use of the self keyword? So the self is nothing but it is the instance of the class. So when I say it is instance of the class, what does this mean? So basically, the moment I created this A, right, the moment I created this A employee object, now this A employee object, which is nothing but the Maggie, it becomes the instance of this class, which is passed to this function when this function is being called. That is what your self is all about. To even make more sense to you, let me in fact comment this B. Let us first only check with the object A that is created. Now let me say print self over here. Now what is self over here? Let us print it, right? And similarly print A also over here. What exactly are these two, right? Now the moment I run this, right, you will see what does it do. What does this print statement do? Both the print statement, print of self and print of A, both are exactly pointing to the same object, right? Now this is what self is used for. So the moment I am running A dot information, right, this A becomes instance of that class. Now A becomes instance of this class. That is why you see that when this def information is run, right, what is actually going on here? Self is going here. Now similarly when you print even A, right, what is this? This is nothing but the instance of that class. So even if I try to print A over here and run this, let's see what exactly happens. Now you see that the A is not defined. Now if you see, you get an error that A is not defined, which is correct, because if you see, this A is not present anywhere inside that particular class. It is outside of the class. So let me simply print self over here and let me simply run it. So now if you see, the self at all the three places, it's same. So the moment you created an object A over here, this object A became the instance of that class and it went over here, right? And then the Maggie became the name, 123 became the ID number, salary was $300, and post became HR. And when it came to this particular function, then again this self became nothing but the self became the instance, which is your A, and it provided these attributes through this name, post and salary. So this is how exactly your oops perform. Now coming on to another part, which is this init. Like, what is this init? Why is it even present over here, right? That is also one of your question that you might feel that, okay, why is this init, right? Now this init, again, what is the purpose of this init? So basically, if you see, whenever I am creating any object of class employee, right, whenever I am creating any object of this particular class employee, then what will happen is this init method is always supposed to run by default. It is always going to run, right? So what it will help in doing, so it will make sure that whenever I am creating any object with any particular attributes, right, whenever I am creating any object with the any xyz attribute, it will help you to initialize those attributes. It will help you to say, okay, I have created this object is present inside this class and these are the attributes for that particular object. So you have created an object, that object gets passed over here as self, right? That becomes an instance and it gets passed over here, and all these attributes, are passed over here, and then this object becomes, a object of that particular class employee, and all the attributes are actually initialized over here. That is the only purpose of, the class employee. Sorry, not the class, but this init function over here, what you see. Another way of looking at it is, let me comment this part, a dot information. Let me comment this print A as well, right? And let me comment this print self as well, because I've explained you the significance of self. And now let me just uncomment this part, okay? I'm saying print welcome to the init method, and here I'm just creating an object A of this particular class and doing nothing else, right? So earlier when we ran this command, we were actually getting no output, right? Now if I run this, you will see it says welcome to the init method. So what is happening eventually here? The moment you create this object, this init method is by default run. So even if you don't have to call it, it will by default run. By default, it will assign Maggie, 123, $300 and HR to this particular object A. It is by default going to do that. It is by default going to run it. But if you want to run any other functions for that class, you have to do it separately. You have to call it like a dot information, and then it will run the information function for that object which you have created. So I hope this was clear. Now if you have any doubts, any issues, try to watch this video again. That is when your doubts will actually clear up. This is how, I have taken a template and I've shown you how does a class look like, what are the basics of it, right? I want you to go back and practice it in your own system with your own hands and try to understand this part what I've explained. So there is much more to it which we are going to cover in the subsequent videos, but I want you all to go ahead and watch this video again, try and practice this so that even the subsequent videos will become easier to you. Now it is not a very difficult concept, so don't worry with that. It's not a difficult concept at all, and in fact the moment you get a grip on it, it becomes very easy for you to code. So now instead, if you have 1,000 employees, you can simply create a class employees, and you can if you want to change anything for those 1,000 employees, it becomes very easy for you. That is how flexible and easier it will be to write the code in terms of OOPS and how OOPS works. Now similarly, we are going to see a lot of other concepts that you can implement in OOPS as we proceed. So I hope you liked this video, and thank you so much for being till here and supporting me, and do remember to like, share and subscribe to my channel.